This is David Hume's problem of induction explained. So in everyday life, you, me, and pretty much everyone else on this planet make inductive inferences. What are inductive inferences? Well, inductive inferences aim to go from what we have observed, extrapolate, and then make conclusions about what we haven't observed. For example, if I drop this pencil and it falls to the floor, if I drop the pencil and it falls to the floor again, if I drop the pencil and it falls to the floor a third time, and so I conclude that if I drop the pencil a fourth time, it's probably going to fall to the floor. You can imagine that cats and dogs and other animals make these kinds of inferences as well. For example, each morning my cat goes into the kitchen. Why? Well, for the past 9 years, my cat has been fed in the kitchen each morning. So she goes into the kitchen expecting that she's going to be fed. Most people think that reasoning in this sort of way is perfectly reasonable. And not reasoning this way would be silly and completely irrational. Well, Hume argues that this kind of inductive reasoning is not a product of the rational mind at all. In fact, it relies on a principle that can't be supported or justified in any way, calling into question the whole enterprise of inductive reasoning and casting, supposedly, a shadow of doubt over almost everything we know. Let's first draw our attention to the fact that these kinds of inductive inferences make use of something called the uniformity principle. So the uniformity principle basically says that the past will resemble the future. Not all the time, but most of the time. Or that there's regularity in nature, that there are natural laws that make it such that if I drop a pencil to the floor 4 times, that's good indication that it's going to fall to the floor the 5th time I drop it. So broadly speaking, the uniformity principle is the idea that the past will be indicative of the future. Now, Hume asks, well, why think that the uniformity principle is true? Now, he sets out 2 methods of aiming to justify something. He takes these as the only 2 methods to justify. And on first blush, it seems plausible that he's correct on that. And the 2 ways to justify something are via reasoning or experience. Now, broadly speaking, it's fairly intuitive what these 2 things are. Reasoning is just your ability to think. So if you know, you don't need to go out into the world to know that square circles can't exist. You know just by the meanings of the terms square and circle that square circles can't exist. And experience is everything else, your sense perceptions. You know that the sun is shining because you can see it or you can feel it on your skin. That's experience, and reasoning is using just your mind. Let's tackle the first option. So, can pure reasoning help to justify the uniformity principle? Well, Hume basically says no. And the reason is, it might seem unintuitive, it might seem a little bit strange, but there's actually no contradiction in supposing that the future be completely different from the past. Strange though it is, there's no contradiction in supposing that when I drop my pen, instead of falling to the floor, it floats up to the ceiling, or it spontaneously combusts. There's no contradiction in supposing that. Reasoning alone can only show whether some things are contradictory, and strange though it may seem, there's nothing contradictory in supposing that the uniformity principle is false. Another way of seeing it is this. Suppose there's a being with no prior experience of this world at all, and I ask that being, what happens when I drop this pen? Well, there's nothing illogical in that being supposing to say, well, it just stays in the air. There's nothing within the laws of logic that say that that can't happen. So how can we justify the uniformity principle? Well, Hume says that it can't be via reasoning. Well, that is just pure reasoning after all. Well, maybe there's another kind of inference that can help us justify this uniformity principle. Maybe experience can help justify the idea that the past will resemble the future. Okay, well, you might think, does experience help justify this idea? Well, obviously it does. I mean, I've dropped a pencil to the floor and it's fallen to the floor 100 times, so if I drop it again, it's going to fall to the floor the 101st time. But let us remember what we're actually trying to justify. We're trying to justify the idea that the past will be indicative of the future. If we say that the pen will fall to the floor because it's done that every single time in the past, well, that's using the very principle we're trying to justify. We can't appeal to past actions of what has happened to try to justify that they will be representative of future actions if the very thing we're trying to justify is that the past will resemble the future. Therefore, any appeals to past experience are just going to be circular. And given that circular justification doesn't confer justification, it seems like we can't justify the uniformity principle via experience either. If circular justification could confer justification, I could presumably say unicorns exist, and you ask me why, and I say, well, unicorns exist. It doesn't matter that that argument is circular. So it turns out that, contrary to what we might first have thought, we seemingly have no justification for the uniformity principle at all, and therefore no justification for induction. This is a deeply unintuitive idea, but it seems, at least again on first blush, that Hume's argument seems watertight. It's important to note, though, that Hume isn't saying simply that we can't know with total certainty that the pen will fall to the floor. He's arguing, rather, for the much more radical conclusion that we're not justified at all that the pen will fall to the floor. He's actually saying we're not justified at all in any inductive inference we make. I think Professor Mark Lang says it best when he writes, Hume's point is not the relatively tame conclusion that we're not warranted in making any predictions with total certainty. Hume's conclusion is more radical, that we are not entitled to any degree of confidence whatever, no matter how slight, in any predictions regarding what we have not observed. We are not justified in having 90% confidence that the sun will rise tomorrow, or in having 70% confidence, or even being more confident that it will rise than it will not. There is no opinion, i.e. no degree of confidence, that we are entitled to have regarding a claim concerning what we have not observed. Like in all of philosophy, there are countless responses to Hume, some agreeing, some disagreeing. I'll maybe take a look at some of the most popular responses. I think certainly one of the most intriguing is Kant's response to David Hume, but maybe that's for another video.